Hey everybody, Brian Leslie Fatherees here
Hi.
with the Unbreakable Ministry. We just finished doing an episode of the Unbreakable podcast. And we want to give you some extra content with what we're talking about. We were talking about grandparenting
Yeah.
and a little bit of that. So go get the podcast, check out the video here on YouTube as well about grandparenting. And we're going to continue talking about grandparenting in this video.
Yes.
We talked about the difference between the world's view, the cultural view, and God's view, the kingdom view. So now we want to talk to you a little bit about different types of grandparenting, different types of grandparents.
And some of the things that we do with
Yeah.
our, more specifically maybe with our grandkids.
Yeah, absolutely. Because and how our own grandparents influenced us
Yes.
some in that regard. I touched
Absolutely.
base on that a little bit at the end of the last video, and the style of grandparenting.
Yeah.
We're not going to hit every single style
No.
because it just takes too long, and this is not a documentary.
No.
This is just a video on
No,
grandparenting.
we want to hit some highlights here.
We are, but there are different kinds of grandparents. There are grandparents that just don't want anything to do with grandbabies. They don't like kids, and so they'll put up with them, let them come in their space, but get them home as soon as you possibly can. There are grandparents who are nothing but the party. Let's all party, bring the grandbabies, let's party. But they have no purpose in how to raise their kids. They just want to play and quote unquote make memories.
Right.
Making memories is fine, but we try to be more purposeful. There are what I would call helicopter grandparents.
Yeah.
Where they have to be involved in every single aspect of the child's life. And it's like they're reliving their parenting through their grandchildren, and that's not healthy either. Because like we love being involved with our grandchildren and with our children's lives, but to say that we're helicoptering or hovering grandparents would be far from the truth. Some days it's like, when's the last time I talked to my daughter? Leslie talks to her more often because Leslie needs more contact, and my oldest daughter more like me. It's like I'm calling her up because I have a purpose. Hey, I need this. What do you need? And we just do our little transaction. Love you, bye, boom. She's calling up and developing a relationship and doing great things and doing it much better than I do. But
maybe
no, definitely. But different types of grandparenting. So we just want to highlight a little bit about our grandparents. I'll start and then I'll throw it to Leslie because I had obviously two sets of grandparents. Obviously, one from mom and one from dad, and they couldn't have been any different. My dad's parents they loved the grandbabies, especially my grandpa. My grandpa especially loved his grandchildren, and they only had two children. It was just my dad and his sister, and then my dad had a bunch of kids, and my aunt only had a couple. So grandpa really took all the kids and would do things with them and for them. To give you a little bit background, my grandfather was an alcoholic, and he was didn't get sober till his late 40s, and so because he valued his time, because he had lost so much time fighting the addiction that he had with alcohol, so when he sobered up, he really spent a lot of time. He did two things a lot. He doted on my grandmother. She became the queen because he treated her like nothing, like dirt, before he sobered up. And then she became his queen for the rest of his life. And then he doted on the grandchildren. I think in a way to apologize to my dad and his sister for how he raised them and treated them, because they were raised in a very abusive situation in their home. Grandma did her best to raise them right and raise them well, but with Grandpa on binges, it didn't help them, right? So he became this doting grandfather, not the helicopter hover guy, but he would take you places. He'd do things. I remember the first time I ever quote unquote drove a car was in one of his cars, and he says, "I've got the gas and I got the brake. Steer it anywhere you want." We're out in the middle of nowhere in the country, and so I'm like 10, 9. So you're like, right?
You used to be able to do that, just in
You
case you're
can't
wondering.
do that
You
now.
can't do that now.
But back then we did. I mean, I went down in a ditch. We went through mud. Oh, there's a mud puddle. Let's go through it. I mean, because you're 9 and you think it's cool. It's a game. It's not actually a 2,000-pound car that can kill somebody. And he wasn't going to let me do something stupid, but so you got to do that. He always treated us to things. He always had candy available. He always had ice cream, but you couldn't eat his. He had extra for you,
Get
but
your own.
you couldn't get into his. And so he was a little bit of a hard man, because he had all these things in his background. And then Grandma, she was just this housewife. She was his wife. She was just this beautiful little housewife, and she made sure there was always a cake or cookies or something in her house. And it was just the two of them, right? But she knew when you were coming. If you were coming, there was a cake made, or there was the cookie jar was filled, and you didn't even have to ask permission. Just like, is there cake? Is there cookie? Yeah, right there. Go have, and you could get what you wanted and do that. My grandpa was also a park ranger of a state park. So going to his home was a joy, because we got to go out and play in the woods and play in the water, and there were springs that we got to go play in and get all soaking wet, and then they had a mud room that you'd have to strip and dry off because he didn't allow you to get his house wet. But we got to do all sorts of really cool stuff, and you can go with him on his like an old gator and drive around and go to the campground, go from camper to camper and steal food. It was great. They didn't really steal it; they gave it to you. You ate better at evening at the campground than you could at home. So you just walk from place. Oh, you have them. Oh, here, have some. Oh, here, have some. It was a great time with my grandparents. So there was a lot of enjoyment. Now, my other side, my mom's parents, my other grandpa was a laborer, blue collar guy. He was also where my one grandpa was addicted to alcohol, that my other grandpa was addicted to gambling. And he was a gambler. So he was a pool shark and a card shark. And so he wasn't around all the time because he's out playing pool or playing cards. But when he was around, he was fun to talk to. Smart. Both of those, my grandma and grandpa, they were antiquers. They collected things, and then they also sold them. My grandma on that side had a running garage sale, antique sale for decades. They had a place every weekend, and if someone needed something, they could show up in the middle of the week and she would sell them. And she had dishes, she had all sorts of unique things. And my grandfather, he'd take me to auctions. He'd take me to estate sales, and he would teach me what to look for in different glassware, teach me what to look for in antiques. And I'll look through a box and find a treasure and buy the whole box cheap to get the one thing that's worth some money. All these things. So, and I still like to do those things. Leslie and I, we go antiquing all the time, and we go into antique stores and we go to all these kind of places because that was instilled in me by my grandfather. It's something he liked to do, something my grandmother liked to do. Now, my grandmother, she was the preacher of the family. And she's a little Baptist lady, and she preached at everybody. She didn't have a lot of grace, but she preached at everybody. And so
she wanted everybody to get saved.
She did. She was a little judgmental, a lot judgmental, and probably repelled more than attracted in a lot of cases. But her heart was in the right place. She really wanted you to become a Christian. And when I became a Christian and did some things, she was really excited. And when I became a pastor, she'd be more excited than anybody else in the family that I got a preacher out of the bunch, yay! And so. So my grandparents had great influence on my life in different ways, and so that still lingers today. There's still a legacy in what they've done in my life today. Some of it's not there because I chose not to do some things that they do, but I did. Like my grandpa, Fatheree, my dad's dad. He was a cigar smoker and a tobacco chewing guy. He had a little spittoon next to his chair, and he smoked cigars. I love and a pipe, and I actually liked the smell still too. Like the smell of pipe, like the smell of cigars. I just can't do them, and won't do them. But when I get around someone smoking a cigar, I'm like, well, that smells pretty good. And now, cigarettes I can't stand, but the other I can stand because I was raised around that as a kid. Never got into the chewing tobacco thing, thank God. Didn't do that. My dad did. He got that from his dad. Then on the other side, Grandpa was, again, a gambler, so we watched a lot of sports. and because he was watching it to see if his bets paid off.
Mm-hmm.
So I was watching it for the sport, now not realizing he was watching it for the bets.
Mm-hmm.
And and he taught me how to play pool, which is kind of fun. I'm not really all that great at it, but I'm okay. He was really good at it, and so he taught all of us boys how to play pool and do those things. So just different types of grandparents,
Yeah.
and the different things that they did in our life. Whether that was good or bad, only God can judge, and I can't.
Right.
But it did bring influence even to this day on some of the things that I do and how I am. Your
My
turn.
grandparents were wonderful grandparents. I had good grandparents.
You did.
My paternal grandparents were farmers
Mm-hmm.
and very hardworking.
Mm-hmm.
They loved to have their family come, especially my grandma. She loved all the family to come. She loved the grandkids to come. She would always be cooking or doing something when we were coming because she wanted it to be special. She was just sweet, just very sweet. My grandfather loved a good laugh, and he loved to play cards.
Yep.
And so we usually mixed those two things together. And so we would play cards and we would tell jokes, and they would just, he and his sons especially could laugh the most heartwarming laugh, and you felt so at home and so happy when that was happening. It was a great time. And but they were basically involved in our life when we went to their house, or if we had a birthday, my mom would invite them to come over and they would be there. But they were not necessarily the kind of grandparents who came to every ball game or every play you were in or every concert that you did. They didn't do that. But they were loving and good and generous grandparents. My maternal grandparents were also loving, good, and my grandma made it her mission in life to make sure that her grandkids got everything they should get in her mind. And I think that stemmed from the fact that she had a father who ran out on their family, and they didn't have very much.
Yeah.
And so she wanted her grandchildren. We always had Easter baskets. We always had Christmas gifts. We had every birthday. She learned to make cakes so she could make them special for us, decorate cakes. You know, she was
very generous lady.
Very generous, and gave gifts. And she worked at a Ben Franklin store, so if you went to see her at the Ben Franklin, you could get a little something from the store, and she'd put it on her tab, and she'd pay that later. But she always gave. She was very generous. And my grandpa on that side was also a generous, loving, big giant, over 6 foot. But he was just a teddy bear. He loved his grandkids. He loved having us be there too. He would make popcorn for us. He would take us for rides on his motorcycle or his scooter or his lawnmower, whatever he had out. He wanted to entertain everybody. And so they were very involved in everything we did. They came to things. They were involved in our lives, in everyday life. And so these are the examples that we are drawing our grandparenting from.
Right.
And we also watched our parents be grandparents. And so my mom is very much like her mother.
Yep.
Always involved in everything, very giving, very much in the middle of all the everyday life. Not helicoptering, but just wants to be there to support.
Right.
Always wants to be involved and to see everything that's going on. My dad is more like his parents, more stoic. And when they were little, he was very involved with them. But as they got to a certain age, he didn't necessarily go to their ball games or go to their plays they were in, or their choir concerts or whatever. He didn't really want to do that.
Right.
And so they had a relationship with him, but it's just a little more stoic. Your parents, Brian's parents, were they loved their grandkids, all of their grandkids.
Yep.
But like he said, they were raising some of their grandparents.
Right.
And so their time frame for our kids was not always as generous as they maybe wanted it to be, even.
Right.
Because they were very involved in the raising of the ones who needed them to be there. Not that our kids didn't need them, but they were not as needy as some of the others.
Yeah.
And so they loved our kids. They were good grandparents.
Yes, they are.
They just were not super involved either, time-wise. Okay, so we've said all that because we are gleaning our grandparenting from those examples. And the Word of God tells us that we are to love our children and our grandchildren and to raise them in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. I'm including grandchildren in that because I think that it's a passing down
Yep.
of everything that you do. So when we grandparent, we definitely are gleaning from loving and giving time to our grandchildren. Whenever we get the opportunity, we give them our time. We let them come, or we go to them and we just let them play every game they want to play.
Right.
I mean, we do a movie with them. We play card games with them, or sometimes we just read books, but we are giving of our time with them. We also treat my family in particular, but his too, would always have cookies or always have cake, or like he was talking about. And my grandma on my mom's side was especially good about, we have ice cream, we have ice cream bars, we have ice cream sandwiches, we have ice cream everything. I mean, she always had, the Schwann's man had come by and she had it in her freezer and she was ready for you when you got there. There were always treats. And fortunately, our children got to experience their great-grandchildren.
Yes.
Not all of them, but most of them.
Great-grandparents.
Yeah, great-grandparents, most of them. So it was really special. They got to also see their great-grandchildren and spend time with them. So that was always a fun thing. We are treating grandparents. We like to treat. The thing that's different about us treating our grandchildren is I will ask my daughter or my son-in-law if it's okay for them to have the treat.
Right.
Because I don't want to interrupt or mess up what they have established.
Right.
And they know if a treat is going to mess up a child's dinner time, if it's going to throw them, taking a nap off because the sugar is going to pump them up, they're not going to take their nap. That is something that I don't ever remember in my generations above me, them asking permission to treat the grandchildren. They just did it. So that's a place where we've made a distinction and a difference.
Yeah.
We ask before we do, just because we're trying to be thoughtful. It's not that we don't want to treat. And sometimes what I do is I say, okay, mom says you can't have this right now, but you can take this bag of cookies with you and you can have it when mom says it's okay. And they love that too. That satisfies them. They can put it in their backpacks and they can take it home with them. And when they are allowed to, they can eat their treat. So that's a way that we've kind of varied off of our examples, but still doing the treating. I think that we are also emulating the grandparents above us because we are very much involved in, if they have choir concerts, we go. Right. If it's all possible, we go. Yeah. We only missed one, and that's because I blanked out and forgot all about it. But other than that, we go. We go to the things that they're doing. We've been to church to see them dedicated to the Lord. We've been to their church to see Shelley be baptized. Mm-hmm. So we participate in the important things of their life. That's something that we got from our grandparents, I think. Absolutely. The Bible says that we are to not allow God's good works to vanish from our hearts, but we are to make them known to our children and our grandchildren. And that's from Deuteronomy 4:9. And so one of the things that we shared about on the podcast and the video before this is that we talk about what the Lord has done with our grandchildren. Yeah. There wasn't a lot of that going on in our grandparents. No. My grandparents all went to church, and I believe they were saved.
Mine didn't go.
His two grandfathers got saved at the very end of their life.
Really late in life.
The very end of their life.
My grandmother went to church. My maternal grandmother. Mm-hmm. The rest of them didn't go to church. Right.
But they didn't necessarily make a big fuss about talking about the Lord, especially with us as children. That could be the time period that they came from. Just didn't do that, maybe. Right. But we do make an emphasis on sharing God things with our grandchildren. Mm-hmm. We want them to know that we pray, that we believe in the Lord, that we believe in what his ways of doing things are, absolutely. And that we believe we should live our lives that way. And so whenever they do maybe vary off of that, like if we had a time period where one of them wanted to tell lies, and so we had to always call them on their lie and correct that. And, so in our house, when they come to see us, or even if they're just talking to us on the phone or something, if they're making up stories that are not just like making up a story, they're like lying to us, then we want to correct that. We want to share that God says that's not okay to do. If they are, hitting, like the grandson definitely likes to be aggressive. He's very aggressive. So sometimes he will act out and do things that are harmful to somebody. And so we don't let him do that, because we tell him that God says you're supposed to respect and honor your elders and your parents and your grandparents. So we don't want you to do that.
Right.
So we share that kind of thing with them. We also try to tell them like what the Lord has done for our family.
Yep.
When his mom went to school, the Lord paid her bill supernaturally, miraculously, sent someone into the office and just said, this is for Hannah Fatherees' bill. I mean, seriously, just really, it was a big deal. And so we try to tell our grandkids the miraculous things that God has done in our life. Yeah. Throw something in on that?
No, you're going.
Okay.
Keep on, you're on the roll.
So we also look for those God moments with our grandchildren.
Yeah.
Moments where we can pray with them. Moments where we can help them understand God more. Yeah. Sometimes it's just, let's take a walk, or let's go outside. Well, look at what God has created. Look at the trees. Look at the stars. Mm-hmm. When they're little, that's the most important thing, that they know God created everything, and he also created them. Right. And that they are special because God created them. Yeah. So we try to share those kind of things with our grandkids.
Yeah, and we try to have fun with them. The oldest grandson, we have 2 grandsons now, but the youngest one's not big enough to do a whole lot.
He's a baby.
He's a baby. He's like 5 months old at the time of this video. But so like with my oldest grandson, if he comes in here and he's allowed to be on a video screen, because sometimes he's not. Right. We may play a game together, video game, or we may watch a video. I subscribe to a couple subscription-based streaming things just to have kid videos for them. Yeah. It's really not for me. It's really for them. Yeah. And so we may watch something that they like and watch a couple videos. And it was funny because like the youngest granddaughter, Josie, she's 2.5.
2.5, yeah.
And so I get her up there watching videos. So we'll be in a video, it's a 30-minute video, and 5 minutes it goes, no, let's watch something else. Like, okay. So we're bouncing from video to video to video. But in her mind, she's having a ball. I'm being frustrated, but she's having a blast. Yeah. And so we do it for them. And so we have to let them do that. So we like to have fun with them. They do understand that, like when they come to our home, it's our rules. Yeah. We talk about our world, our place. So the rules here may be different than what their mom and dad have. They don't contradict the rules that their parents have.
No, and I would say that our daughter's rules are pretty similar to what ours would be because we raised her. Yeah. But sometimes they have some rules in effect from their household, like no screens. Maybe it's because they got in trouble, or maybe it's just because their parents feel like that's not a good thing for them right then. So when they come to our house, we have our set of rules about how we do things here, right? But we want to honor what our children are doing with our grandchildren, so we will hold up the rule that they have already established, because we are showing that solidarity that we have with our children to raise our grandchildren. Yeah. I think it's fun to start traditions with our grandkids.
Give an example.
One that kind of just popped up. The last time they stayed with us, our daughter had Xander, and he was very little, and he really was a mommy baby. And so this was the first time that she was getting to go out and away without taking a Xander with her. And so they went to dinner, and they were going to try to catch a movie, but they weren't sure how far they'd get. Or maybe they're doing the movie first, then they're going to go to dinner. And so we did fine. Everybody was here. We all had fun. And it helps that we have children still at home, because those are the aunts and uncles, and they play also with the kids. And so that's all fun. But we got to a point where we thought the baby really needs mom. And so Our daughter and son-in-law came home, picked up the baby, then went to dinner with the baby and left the others here. So Aiden, our almost 8-year-old, I had watched them play, and I knew that it was Saturday night and tomorrow was church, and they needed to be cleaned up so that our daughter didn't have to do that when she went home with all of them.
Right.
So I asked him, I said, do you want to take a bath here? And he says, yes. He was so excited about it. And I'm looking at him, I'm like, really? And so then I thought about it as I was bringing up to give him a bath. He has stayed all night with us from time to time. And every time he stays all night with us, I give him a bath. And there's special toys for the bath. And he gets to play with them, but he doesn't play with those toys any other time except in the bath.
Right.
But this was a tradition that he liked. He was very excited about. We take a bath at grandma's. We get to play with these toys.
Right.
It's really exciting. And so now he's almost 8 years old, but he still thinks that's really fun.
Mm-hmm.
And so starting a tradition is really cool. So this time, Josie was here too, because she's only 2.5. She hasn't stayed all night with us, just because we don't have space for that yet. But she got to take a bath too, and she thought that was fun too. And so one of the traditions my grandma used to have with us when my cousins and my sister and I were at her house, we used to take a bath, and then we'd get to wear grandpa's t-shirts, undershirts, as like long nightgowns, because we didn't have our stuff with us. Grandma just gave us a bath because we had been outside playing or whatever, and we needed to be clean. And so we'd put on grandpa's t-shirt. So Josie took a bath, and I got one of her uncle's t-shirts and I put it on her, and she got to wear it like a dress or like a nightgown, and she thought that was so fun. And so we started a tradition. It was a lot of fun to do with them, and we enjoyed it, and they enjoyed it.
Right.
And so it could be anything, but that was just one that has kind of popped up recently that we were like, oh, that's really special. That's really neat.
Yeah. And then the last note we have on here is to make sure that you spend one-on-one time with your grandchildren.
Yeah.
Because they need to each feel special. They're special as a group, but you want them each to feel that they're special individually.
Right.
So you want to spend a little bit of time. Like let's say did the bath, but each of them, it wasn't the two of them, it was one at a time. So they each had a time with grandma. I've been on the video screen with just one at a time.
Sometimes it's reading books.
It is.
We have book lovers, so if they want to read books, then we try to just do it one-on-one with them, whatever book they think is special. Also, like, girly girls need to have nails painted and that kind of thing, and so that's a special one-on-one thing that you can do. He doesn't do that, but I do that. Sometimes it's a walk outside. Maybe you want to just take a walk with them. That's fun too. But give him one-on-one time. Brian, I know, will take Aiden sometimes. There's an ice cream shop really close to our daughter's home, where they live. And so he'll say, well, how about we go get ice cream? So he'll just take Aiden and go get ice cream, just the two of them by themselves.
Yeah.
So,
let him order what he wants and make a mess. It's great.
Yeah.
So it's grandparenting. You have to look for God moments. You have to look for teaching moments.
Yeah.
You have to look for
sharing moments.
Sharing moments. You have to look for a chance to create traditions that will create legacy, like the t-shirt thing Leslie's talking about with the kids. So that's something that's actually become a legacy now, because it's now the third generation of someone doing that, really fourth. But it's passed down through generationally. And then you want to look at one-on-one times, because you want to, the world's all about building people's self-esteem and telling them how great and wonderful they are. And there's some truth to that.
Yeah.
But you also want to be disciplinarians in the sense that you make sure that they, like we talked about in the last video, we're not spoiling them, but we're treating them.
Yeah.
And they have to obey, they have to honor, they have to respect. And so we demand those things, but there's a reward for those things.
Yeah.
And so grandparenting is a joy. It's not a pain.
Right.
It's really fun. You're still going to have moments because they're kids. And so, but we learn, and like she said, we've pulled from what we've learned from our own grandparents and great grandparents, from our own parents and watching them grandparent, and then applied to things we liked and dismissed the things that we didn't. Where my kids went to school at, and they all went to the same Bible school. The president of school is a lady, and she says, when someone's talking to you, eat the meal and spit out the bones. Yeah. So there's things that you don't want to spit out the bones, but eat the meal, eat the food, and do that. So anyway, anything else we need to add to that?
Just thinking when you were saying that the one-on-one time, we are big proponents of quantity time.
Yes.
Quality time sounds like it's a better thing.
It's a misnomer.
But quantity time matters. So when they're with us, we try to spend time with them.
Right.
Not in our own world doing our own things, but actually with them. That doesn't mean I can spend every moment that they're here doing that, because there are things in the house that have to happen.
Sure.
But we try to give them quantity time that is special. So one-on-one time is a really good focused time to do something with them.
That's a good point.
And be with them. So.
And even if you're going to do something that's your world, not their world, you can include them
in it, yeah,
and make that become part of their world.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I'm a sports nut, so I may be watching a ball game or something,
Mm-hmm.
so I'll include them in on it.
Yeah.
And talk about the team, the sport, the rules, whatever. But then there's other times that I turn it off and I'll miss my game that I'm wanting to watch, because I want to spend time with them because they're here.
Aiden likes to make the macaroni with me.
Yes,
so
he does.
He will come in and get on a stool so that he can see the pan and put the macaroni in when the water boils. So things like that. Include them in. That's special to him, though, that you let him do that.
Yeah.
So the time is a thing.
Yeah.
Time is a thing.
It's important. I mean, you and I both like time spent with each other. You know, as individuals and people, we all like it when someone makes us feel special. You know, when they use our name, when they spend time, they go out of their way to be kind to us, to be generous to us. So as grandparents, you need to do that for your grandbabies. All right? Anything else?
No.
All right. With that said, that's the end of this current video, and I look forward to more on here. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Or like, subscribe, and share. Either way, we want you to do it. All right. Talk to you soon. Bye.